Welcome to our 2023 draft recap episode. Usually at this time of the year, we do a highly requested mock draft episode, but instead, this show will recap all of our high money and expert league drafts and auctions. The focus will be on pre-draft strategy, in-draft tactics, what to look for, a guide on how to plan your upcoming drafts. We'll cover 12-team versus 15-team, point leagues versus roto leagues, snake draft versus auction, slow versus real-time, online drafting versus in-person. We'll cover all the formats with guidance and differences for each, with player discussions embedded throughout, great nuggets of information, and of course, Ruvain's injury report at the end. 2022 NFBC Auction Championship winner Steve Cozzolino joins this strategy-rich show next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm back to being hoarse again. It was getting better. A lot of drafting, a lot of talking in the auctioneering, buying. So I guess that got me after a long weekend of Tout Wars. Otherwise, I'm doing pretty good. World Baseball Classic. Well, oh my God, did you see that game last night? Japan-Mexico. That was some game.
That was a great game. And today's game, it's going on now, the championship. It's just crazy to see the two main pitchers so far for Team USA coming from the Diamondbacks and coming from the Rockies, two teams that almost nobody drafts pitchers from.
Yeah, the thing is that, I think the concern is playing pitchers. And playing pitchers, you can't really have length. You can't have pitchers as they are. So this is not a real representation, being that it's in spring training. All the more reason to have this kind of thing, which, by the way, is so popular and so entertaining. I would love to see this happen like once every 3 years instead of the All-Star game.
Well, they actually just announced it, that it's going to be every 3 years. The next year's going to be in 2026.
Yeah, I like to have in the middle of the season, instead of the All-Star break, have this for like a 2-week tournament and do it then, so pitchers can be as is and everyone can be up to speed and it could be a real game,
I guess, but the risk of injury is higher, I think, in the middle of the season because people are going to push themselves more. But you never know.
Well, again, I apologize for the little bit raspy voice, but hopefully we have good information. Today is our draft recap episode. We're going to go through a bunch of our teams that we've drafted and auctioned over the past couple of weeks. And the idea is not to show, oh, I love my team, I did a good job. No, the idea is to give this strategy, because we've been talking strategy for, almost 3 months now as to what we're going to do. I'm going to show you what we actually did, and we'll talk about, what went right, what went wrong, and hopefully you'll get something for your draft this coming week so you can do it. We're going to be doing a recap of some snake drafts, auctions, 12-team, 15-team, roto, points, playoffs, slow draft. So we're going to have a lot of combinations of different things, so you'll get some good gist out of everything. And with us to help that is none other than the 2022 NFBC Auction Championship winner. Welcome to the show, Steve Cozzolino. How are you, Steve?
Hey guys, hi Ruvain, hi Ariel. Thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm doing well. Excited to continue drafting. It's been a fun past 2 weeks with all the drafts in the books, and I love drafting with you guys and talking about them. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Steve is in 2 leagues of ours, including an NFBC auction that we did this past Friday in the city that we'll talk about. He's also in a league called the Gotham Diamond District League, GDD, that actually the 3 of us are in together as separate teams. I partner with Derek Carty in that league. And we all do TGFBI in our own separate league. So let's get right to it, and let's go through some of our teams. We're not going to go pick by pick, but we're going to talk general strategy, some good picks, and a couple of notes on each to talk. So let's start with you, Steve. Let's talk about TGFBI. TGFBI, the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational, as most of you who listen know, is Justin Mason has created this a couple of years ago. He invites pretty much anybody in the industry who produces some content, either who does it for a living or just does a podcast or just writes an article here and there. Somebody who's creating content is eligible, and there's almost 400 or so players into about 29 different leagues. With all the same format, NFBC standard format. We're all competing for an overall contest. So there's a league winner, an overall winner, and so on and so forth. Ruvain did really well in it. It's second year. He finished in second place. So we definitely have experience with it. The format is it's a slow draft. So we each get 4 hours to make picks. You can think a little bit. And that started somewhere in the end of February. So starting with you, Steve, what is your general strategy that you try to employ in TGFBI? This is such a broad question, but I'll start with that with you.
Sure. Up front, I always like to get power and speed, power speed bats. That's an important combo with the first few picks. In my first 5 picks, I at least want to have get an anchor for a closer because there's not many of them, and then 2 aces or soft aces, second tier aces, along with a couple bats that again have a nice blend of power and speed. And then in the second part of the draft, I mean, typically in the back end of the draft, I like to go for upside because it is a fab league, so I can backfill those spots if they don't work out. But overall, throughout the draft, I try to get a lot of balance, especially when it comes to speed. I don't go for rabbits. I tend to go for guys who will chip in 5 to 10 stolen bases each. That's typically my strategy.
All right, Ruvain, what about you? Anything to add for the general strategy?
Yeah, general strategy. I did exactly what I've been preaching the entire preseason. I go for value up top, try to get as many value players as possible, especially the hitters. I tried to wait as long as possible to get a closer because I don't like picking a closer and on it in the second or third or even fourth round. I actually got my anchor in the fourth round. I got went hitter, 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 starting pitcher, relief pitcher, and then toward the end of the draft, I'm just looking for value, trying to find spots where I have holes in my offense, and then wherever I noticed that I was going weak toward the end of the draft, I said, "Oh wait, I have a weakness in outfield or something like that." Then I'll try to throw in, late outfield picks that have some upside that you never know they may hit.
So I'll give you a couple of points of strategy that I had. Well, first of all, I'm a value drafter. So, I'm looking for highest value if it's there, unless there's a good category balance. Like every pick is either high value pick or a category balancer. I try to avoid risk. Point number 2, I don't like picking risk, especially early on. So you won't see me taking any of that. I did notice that shortstop is pretty deep up top. So I did not feel the need to push a shortstop at all. I took a first shortstop, round 8. I didn't need to push something any further than that. Corner infield, I saw a hot spot somewhere around 9 to 11, let's say. So I didn't need to push anything up there, other than I did have the strategy of I was thinking about taking Vladimir Guerrero Jr. early for stability, even though he's a first baseman, but he adds so much power and batting average that I thought was going to needed to be he was the ability to be a rock this year, where I picked. So I was thinking about that. I did pick Vlad. It was part of the strategy. Second base, I do notice that second base is very wide at the bottom, meaning there's a lot of similar people at the $1 to $5 mark, let's say. So I did not have to press second base at all. Unless the value came to me, I was fine with waiting there. Those were the basic strategy points I had, and you just draft value, value, value. Steve, did you have a KDS, Kentucky Derby style preference for this?
Originally, I was targeting the back end, towards the back end. I don't like being at the end, either end. I don't like being at the turn, but I do because you can miss runs pretty easily that way, and it's a long wait between picks. So I was going to originally go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the back end there, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 was my setting, and mainly because I targeted Yordan Alvarez. I was wanting him at the 8 or 9 slot, but that was before the news came out about his hand. And when I heard that, I said, well, that's coming from October. And I even wonder, like, Ruvain, what do you think of that? To me, that feels and sounds chronic. or something that's long term. So I'm staying away from him now. So that changes my opinion of the 8-9 slot.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. I wanted the eight spot also. I put eight as my number one, and I wasn't targeting Jordan because I didn't want him because of the fact of that hand injury. That's an injury that's been lingering since last year. He did play through it a little bit, but the fact that it's already March 21st and he hasn't played in the game yet, that's a little bit concerning to pick someone that or pick someone with the eighth overall pick in your draft to have as your anchor. So, like Ariel, I picked Vlad Jr. as my number eight. I had a number eight pick, and we picked the same first pick. But it's a second round where things started changing up a little bit, and it's based on we have to see how the drafts go because my draft is going to be completely different from your draft, and you have to be able to find the right balance and figure out balance risk with injury. And when it comes to going number eight with a possible Jordan Alvarez who hasn't even played yet, I just wanted to stay away from him.
Yeah, Steve, I had the exact same strategy for KDS. 8, 9, 10, and then, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3. I did not like the ends, and I've talked about that on the show plenty. But yes, I had the same strategy. And yes, Yarden was a possibility until you heard about the hand. I would shift, as you, the KDS a little bit later, but still a preference towards the middle rather than the ends. Did you have a specific first 4-round strategy, Steve? In your draft, you took Betts, Riley, and then you actually had a pitcher run where you took Strider, Rodon, and then a closer, Presley. Was that your general strategy? Hitter, pitcher, save, something like that in the first 5?
Exactly. And I'd start with it. It's the first 5. That fifth round, by the fifth round, as I mentioned, I wanted my closer, basically a $20 closer and up. So that first tier of closers in my mind. And Presley was at the end of that tier. So that worked out perfectly. I felt like Helsley was the end of that tier, but he got picked right before the pick came to me. And then, the two starters, I wasn't planning on Strider and Rodon. Since this is a fab league again, I decided to take a bit more risk. Usually I don't. And also, this is not a money league. So, in a $1,500 auction championship, no, I'm not going to draft Carlos Rodon, even before he came up with the injury. Strider as well. He just feels a bit too risky for me in a higher stakes league. But since this is more for fun, I thought those were good. There were value that fell to me, Strider and Rodon. So I took them there. And Riley in the second round, that was an easy pick for me because he's not even peaking yet. He's a young bat, and he's got 35 plus power in that bat.
Yeah, you guys got lucky in the second round. You got to take Riley. Riley was taken before me. You guys had, I'm not going to say an easier draft, but I sort of liked the decision making available to you guys more than me. I struggled a little bit early on. I took JT Realmuto in the second round. I thought that was a good value for him. I was contemplating even taking Edwin Diaz in the second round. I was happy to get him in the third round. Now I'm sad that I got him, obviously, with him being out, and so on and so forth. Ruvain, let's go to you on this. How did you handle saves, or what was the plan, and how did you execute it?
My plan was to try to get saves somewhere in the first couple of rounds, but I tried to avoid second, third, fourth round because I don't want to overpay for the closer. Now, you mentioned that you got Real Muto in the second round. He fell to me in the third round. That's where I really wanted to get my starting pitcher. So because of that, my whole draft got pushed back a little bit. I went for the starting pitcher in the fourth round, and I ended up getting Ryan Helsley, the end of that tier, in the fifth round, which it couldn't have worked out any better. That was for me, that was the end of that tier. And because it fell to me, that was perfect. And what I did was toward the end of the draft, because I have Helsley, I actually picked up Giovanni Gallegos later on in the 20th round, just as a backup, just to make sure, because you never know, he'll start splitting saves or God forbid he gets hurt like Diaz did. You never know. So I always wanted that. I think it's a good handcuff because Gallegos will give you good numbers, he'll give you good peripherals. Even if you don't have the saves from him, you'll get good numbers from him. And then I also went with some darts. I got Sir Anthony Dominguez. I also went with Jonathan Loaizaga. You never know, things happen. So I just threw those guys out. And I just, again, I didn't reach for these guys. They were there. I thought the values were good where I got them. And I don't like to have to reach above the value because I think I'm going to lose value in those areas if I just try to keep reaching for saves.
So, Steve, you got a solid lockdown Ryan Presley in the fifth round. Then you really didn't take a closer. You sort of took, I guess, Giovanni Gallegos was a closer dart in the 19th. really, and Rafael Montero in the 23rd. But you really didn't look for guys who are top line closers, middle line closers, even third tier closers. Was that the plan?
Yes, similar to Ravine, and I take it a bit more of an extreme this year because I think there's so much uncertainty on the back end of these closers, those late tiers. There's just so much uncertainty. And last year I did win the overall auction championship, and I only had, I think it was 56 saves. So you can be mid of that pack even for the overall in placing of saves. So I think my goal was targeting, 55, 65 saves. So if you get a horse like Presley, Helsley, or any of the top closers, 30, 35 saves easy. And then I just want to look for about 20 more saves. So if, Montero can chip in with 10 to 15, Gallegos another 10, and then I threw a flyer on Jimmy Herget. I'm just looking for 20, 25 more saves in the draft just to get me going. And then I'll pick some more up along the way in Fab.
Yeah, I had a special feeling about Diaz because Diaz, just so locked down and all those strikeouts. I mean, it's the ratios and strikeouts that really give him, an edge above all the other closers. I went with him, and then the plan was to get just somebody down there. I got Alex Lang in the 13th, just somebody who gets some saves. And I went with Evan Phillips, who maybe he's the closer, but he'll give me ratios. And then I went with a couple of shots later. I took Kendall Graven in the 25th. I took Michael Fulmer in the 27th. So, a third tier closer, a top tier closer, and a couple of shots is how I picked it. That was the plan, and I did execute that.
I also picked up Duran in the 10th round. So I wanted to, I didn't you don't need to get a second full closer. Steve, exactly what you're saying. You don't need a second full closer. But if you can get a couple of half closers that help with your ratios for that second closer, you should be okay.
I like that Fulmer pick late. I thought that Fulmer pick late was really nice, Ariel. So good gamble there.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, I think Duran is another good option. If you had Duran and another, even like an Alex Lang or one of those, low tier closers, you get a little bit of saves with Lang, you get the ratios with Duran, and so on and so forth. That's a good way to pair. Let's talk speed. My feeling is that with the new bases and new increase in speed, that there is absolutely no reason to over prioritize speed. That's not to say that you should not walk out of the first couple of rounds with some speed. I think that you do have to be conscious of getting it. There still is a dearth of speed, but you don't have to be over aggressive and push over players. So, wherever your values calculate the players should be, to me, that's where you should be taking them. Whereas last year, people were just pushing them up. I got Vladimir Guerrero in the first round, so I knew I had to get somebody with some speed. JT Realmuto actually gives some speed. So I thought I was okay out of the first two rounds. Probably was a little bit light on speed, over on power, so Cedric Mullins in the fourth, to me, was the perfect guy to balance. And I got him. And later in the seventh round, I thought way after his value, I got Starling Marte. I usually don't like getting players who are very similar in profile. Mullins and Marte are, but they perfectly balanced Guerrero and Real Muto. So that was the plan for me with speed, and then just get a little bit of speed contributors here and there as we go. Steve, you did talk about speed already. Anything to add, Ruvain?
Yeah, what I did was I don't like paying for speed, just like I don't like paying for saves early on. So what I did was I had Vlad as my first one. Devers will give you maybe a handful. I got JT Remote to also give you a handful. Then I took pitcher. Then I saw I had plenty of power, so that's when I saw at a perfect value was Tommy Edman. Great, I got speed there. Then I went Tyler O'Neill. Get a little bit of speed there. Then I waited and waited and waited, and I didn't get a shortstop. Ariel, you said you would wait also. I waited all the way until the 21st and 22nd round to get my shortstops. I got Luis Garcia, who's just a blend of everything and who's a value there, but I got my 22nd round Jorge Mateo, another guy for speed. I felt that I didn't have to pay for those guys. They got starting gigs, so I don't have to worry about that too much, and I have my speed on my team in case I need to insert it anytime I need to.
Yeah. Steve, did you have a plan for catchers? I know some people are like punt catchers. Some people are like just get any. Some people push at the top. Did you have a specific catcher deal or just wherever the value was?
Well, it is about value, as you mentioned, but for me, I used to go with inexpensive catchers, and I always think of this as I just can't help it, but I'm an auction drafter, right? So I keep thinking of it in auction values. But this year, I was really targeting. There were so many good, solid middle value catchers. So between like Wilson Contreras and down to like Sean Murphy, that bunch of like $12 to $15 catchers, if you will. I wanted one from that tier, and then a second catcher. From say the $2 to $5, $6 tier, starting with Danny Jansen and then or Kyber Ruiz, Moreno, Jonah Heim. Those are the type of strategy I was looking at for catcher, and that's really reflected in my auction drafts.
Yeah, I generally do the same thing. To me, though, I push also towards where I think the value is. And auctions are different than snakes. Here, you sort of just have to see, where the drop-offs are. Oh, is there a big drop-off? If you don't take this catcher to the next one, then it's time to push catcher. I look for the drop-offs. I call it replacement level drafting. If you see there's a big drop-off, time to take the catcher. If the drop-off is bigger than a different position, time to take the catcher. If it's pretty similar, it's not.
And the way my draft went is my second catcher happened to be the highest value on the board. I ended up getting Travis d'Arnaud. What round was this? I got Travis d'Arnaud in the 15th round, and he happened to be the highest value on my board. And I'm thinking, why would I not take it if it's the highest value on the board, even though he's a catcher? So what? He's your second catcher. I think, Ira, you took your second catcher. I think it was like a $1 catcher toward the very end. I usually try to do that also, but if the values are there, I don't want to leave them on the board just because they're a catcher.
Yeah, I don't specifically go after the catchers. It's whether if they're somewhere towards the top of the board, sure. And of course, if you valued your players correctly, you should be indifferent on position, right? If an $8 shortstop is worth the same as an $8 catcher, as long as you value it correctly, right? If you do the math, then you should be indifferent, all things being equal. Let's just go over any of. What were some of the easiest decisions that you made during the draft? Start with you, Steve.
For me, it really, I mentioned these already, but it was really in the second round. Austin Riley was an easy pick there because it's such a drop off at third base. And like I said, he's easy 35 home runs in the bank, easy, even up to 40 home runs, home run hitter. And then again, the fifth round, since Helsley was already drafted, Presley was the end of that tier of anchor closers. So I got my anchor there. Those are really by far my easiest picks. I think in the middle there, well, by the 10th round, all the first basemen were gone. I waited too long for first baseman. So, and my targets were either Christian Walker or Rowdy Tellez in like the 11th, 12th round, but they got bumped up a round each. And sure enough, I had Tellez there at the end of that tier, and he got picked right before it came to me, my turn in round 10. So that was an easy pick for me. I went with CJ Crone, who I don't love, and he was not on my draft list, but he was at the end of that tier, and I felt like I needed a bit of safety there, and at least he's going to give you some solid numbers across the board.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing. Round 10, CJ Crone, Tellez and Walker were taken. And so I bumped and I got CJ Crone, same as you.
Hey, great minds think alike, right, Ariel?
Yeah, exactly. If well, you won the auction championship last year, so hopefully I have the same instinct this year. This is draft though, but in any case, I agree with that decision. My easiest decisions, as I mentioned before, Edwin Diaz round 3. I was contemplating round 2, so that was easy. Nick Castellanos, I got him in round 9. I have a nice value for him, and he was just easily the best value on the board. That was good. Javier Baez in the 12th. I don't love Javier Baez, but 12th round? That sounds good to me. And Patrick Sandoval in the 14th round. I needed a pitcher at that point. He has upside. He has value, innings, strikeouts. I thought that was the right time to take him. How about you? Easiest decisions, Ruvain?
Easiest decision was JT Remuto in the middle of the third round, and he fell to me. I mean, how can I not take that? That's very easy. And then the easiest decision that was made for me was the fact that there was an 11 pitcher run in the third to fourth round with all the starting pitchers and a bunch of relievers going also. So this is when I said, you know what? If I don't get my starter here, then I'm not going to get a starter that I really want. So that's when I picked up Shane Bieber. So actually, that decision was made for me just based on how the draft was going.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of other easy decisions. Framber Valdez, round 6. That was a slam dunk. I mentioned Starling Marte. And David Peterson, they announced Quintana hurt somewhere right before that pick. Round 23, I got David Peterson. He was the next guy there. I'm like, oh my goodness. He's going to be a starter. He's really good. So I got a nice, very late David Peterson. Any tough decisions you had to make, and what your thought process was, Steve?
Well, usually the tough decisions come towards the back end of the draft. How much risk versus upside I want to take. And who's going to be drafted because a lot of people are thinking the same thing. So in the back end of the draft, that's when people start snagging guys earlier, than expected. I was able to get Jamison Tyone in the 18th round, so I was happy about that because he was one of my targets. But tough decisions. A lot of them it gets more and more difficult, I think, as the draft progresses. And so to find speed late, to find a little bit of power late. So I gambled with Adam Duvall in the 20th round, Jose Siri in the 22nd for added speed. I figured that was a good risk to take. So those were really my tougher decisions at the end of the day.
Anyone for you, Ruvain?
Yeah, at the end of the draft, I wanted to get pitchers that can give me some length. They can give me some that are the horses. And I was looking at my board, and there weren't really many pitchers out there that I loved toward the end there. I ended up getting Adam Wainwright in the 24th round. Yes, he was like a gazillion years old, but he threw almost 200 innings last year. So that's something that I'm pretty comfortable with, especially because with that, I was able to take Bailey Ober with a little bit of an injury risk later on because who knows, maybe he'll get a bunch of innings also. I also wanted to get, it was very hard. I wanted to get someone with multiple position eligibility toward the end of the draft. And I was looking, I couldn't find anyone. And then all of a sudden, Joey Wendell fell into my lap. And that was the perfect guy that I wanted. And I just needed him to get to me. And I was praying, don't get sniped, don't get sniped, don't get sniped. And he ended up falling to me. So I got a little bit lucky there. But if he didn't fall to me, then I would have had a bigger problem.
Yeah. I tried to get Wendell in a lot of drafts and auctions, but I kept getting sniped on him. Very good. Good for position eligibility and gives you a little bit of everything. All right, so that's TGFBI. I want to spend a little time on LABR. I'm the only guy who participated in it. It was the LABR mixed auction 2 weeks ago in Florida. Actually, Steve, you were there for it, actually, right?
Yes, had a blast in at First Pitch Florida with you guys.
And I'm usually there drafting with you. So this is the first time we did LABR separately. So then, it's me time to asking you the questions because basically usually we do it as a team and I want to know your thought process, how you went through the LABR because it is a smaller league. It's a 12-team mixed auction. Did knowing the players in the league, the participants, did you know how to plan your draft based on who was sitting at the table or just based on talking to them before the draft?
Yeah, so that's one thing I do that I preach, and you've heard me that I actually try to research as much as I can who is in the draft and how they work. Maybe a hitter-pitcher split that looks odd, maybe some interesting targets. Like, for example, Ryan Hallam, he's a Cardinals fan. He gets Paul Goldschmidt like everywhere. Guess who he got this draft? He got Paul Goldschmidt. So you know that you're not going to get Paul Goldschmidt if you're sitting in a room with Ryan Hallam. If you can know certain players, you also know where certain players play. I know that Doug Anderson plays a lot of guys at the top. Aaron Judge, I knew I wasn't going to be in on those guys because he was going to be scooped up. I know that Adam Ronis, who was in the league, he also tries to go for top guys. He didn't in this draft, but I know he likes the speed guys at the top. He got Bichette and Arozarena. There was a lot of new people in the league, so I couldn't figure out everything. Nick Pollock was in the league. I know Nick likes to just go a little bit cheap on pitchers because he thinks he can, fly with it, and he likes to buy some big hitters. He bought Matt Olson, Mike Trout, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, scouting is a big thing to know who to stay away from. When we talk about the Tout Wars, you'll see that more. That really helped. But, yes, that is a part of my draft prep.
Ariel, I know you were happy with your draft and very pleased because we spoke about it at length afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I got a lot of value. So the biggest strength that I had was, well, first of all, going in, the whole strategy in doing these auctions is knowing where those hot spots are. I know we talk about it, but the way you see it is you see what positions you can take haircuts on. So I saw that the corner infield, that there were just so many bargains to be gotten. I thought that the market was underpricing a lot of these. So I didn't feel the need to overspend for any corners, and I ended up with a $6 Ryan Mountcastle, which is insane, a $6 Ryan McMahon, which is excellent, and an $8 Christian Walker, which is fantastic. There's so much value in that. And I knew I would get that, so I didn't feel the need to overspend. Now, if Freddie Freeman would have come up a reasonable price, I love Freddie Freeman, sure, but he went for 36. I didn't have to push it. Unlike catcher, there wasn't much of an undercut there. Players were going roughly at value. So if I wanted to spend a little bit more money on offense and not make sure that I don't leave money on the table, I said I'm going to get at least one very good catcher. I happen to like the price for Real Muto. I spent 23 on Real Muto. In the outfield, I know there's bargains in the teens. That's where I see it. There's always some bargains late, but there's teens. So I got a $16 Tyler O'Neill, $14 Jake McCarthy, $9 Brandon Nimmo before he got hurt, which was a good one, $8 Anthony Santander. I'm getting guys at $5 below prices because I know where the hot spots are. Now, if any player comes up in early that's close to value, I take it. For example, Jose Altuve, I got him for 24. This is before he got injured, of course. Jose Altuve, close to price? Sure, I'm going to snag that. You snag anybody high that's within $1, and then you wait on the spots that you know are the hot spots, and that's how you play it.
Now, speaking of that, your most expensive player is Shohei Ohtani, which you've never done before. I know that because we draft a lot. We've never done before. Now, before I ask you why you did that, Steve, have you ever targeted Ohtani in any of your drafts ever?
No, I've never owned him in any of my drafts.
Is it because of his risk, or do you just don't feel comfortable at his price?
I think it's a combination of risk. I will say this, in the DCs, the draft and hold that I'm doing now, those drafts he's great at because to have him as a pitcher or a hitter, to have that flexibility in a non-fab league, that's nice, a nice option and flexibility to have. In these other leagues where week to week you do your roster management, I don't see the value there as much. Daily league, totally different story, right? So it really depends on the setting of the league, and how rosters are managed. So yeah, I stay away from him in these weekly transaction leagues and the weekly leagues where you set your rosters.
So, Ariel, why did you go after him then?
Well, I didn't go after him, but my value sheet had about $33 for Ohtani. In this league, Ohtani is one player can play either hitter or pitcher, so very valuable there. And even with a risk discount, it takes him to 30, so $26, and I can use him as a hitter or pitcher. He's a substantial pitcher also. On weeks where to start, very good matchups. Why not? And otherwise, he's a fantastic hitter. $26 was just great. So instead of paying for a $30+ outfielder, Shohei Ohtani is a first-round player. I got him at 26. I couldn't walk away. You just can't walk away from that much value, and that's why I got him.
Agreed. I would even have paid that. Yeah, I would have paid that for him too.
Yeah, that's cheap. So you actually got him quote unquote cheap for what he could actually be worth. Now, what did you do with saves? I saw you drafted Diaz again. I think it looks like you're very high on Diaz. What was your save strategy going into the labor draft?
so so by the way, I'm getting killed in this league because I have Diaz. I also have Jose Altuve and Nimmo. Nimmo I'm not worried about, but oh goodness. The nice thing though, in TGFBI, you lose Diaz. That's it. He's a drop. In this league, at least you get Fab Reclaim. So the money that I spent on Diaz, the $21, at least I get $21 out of 100 back in Fab. So everyone starts the year with 100. I start with 121. So at least I get that. The deal again was get a top closer. I like the price, 21 Edwin Diaz. That was enormous. Closers sometimes, in other leagues, Edwin Diaz has been going 23, 24. And I know it's a 12-team league, but still, there aren't that many solid closers. And then the rest of the way, I got some middle ones. I got Johan Duran for just $6, Andres Munoz for just $4, and I got Jason Adam for $1 just to fill in some more ratios and maybe a couple saves here and there. But I just went, with cheap values of middle guys, being that I got the one top Diaz after that.
Well, that's a question for you, Ariel. What the question is, how do you pull off so many values, top to bottom? I mean, you named them all. I mean, basically, you didn't mention Max Fried, and that's still a few dollars of value there. Drew Rasmussen, like you mentioned, Diaz is a $25 pitcher, and Otani is a steal at that price, and all the other hitters you mentioned. I mean, there's not one player here that's not below that you paid below value for. It's how do you pull that off?
Pretty good, right? Yeah,
Patience, patience, patience,
it's
patience.
it's patience, but it's also knowing when to strike. When you have guys, I mean, look, an auction is a zero sum game. If you calculate your dollars and everybody adds up to 260 times 12, or 3120, whatever it is, um, if anybody goes $5 over, by math, there has to be somebody who's available $5 under. For every for every time somebody is bought at a loss, there's got to be somebody at a profit somewhere. So, you have to be patient in that. And what happens is you have guys going in the 40s. There's in a 12 team league, you know, there shouldn't be guys well over $40. When you have people spending that much, they can't play the middle, right? If you're playing in the $40 range, you buy a $40 player and a $35 player, you're not playing in the middle teens. You're not playing in the 20s. You're playing low dollars. You're going to get a couple of dollar picks. That's how you're spreading your team. So because there are fewer teams, the more teams that do that, there are fewer teams playing the middle. And when there's fewer teams playing the middle, there's just more opportunity when the prices now go under, right? Because they overinflate on top, they're overvalued. There's got to be bargains in the middle. When you have fewer players playing like that, you're going to grab it. So you have to see early on how high the players are going over your values. If players are going just a little bit over your values, you have to strike early and get a high value player. Otherwise you won't be competitive because there's going to be too many people fishing for discounts in the middle. But when everybody's going over your value at the top, you take the auction temperature, you say hot. Oh, I know there's going to be values in the middle. I just wait. You scoop up all the bargains. That's generally what you do. You got to take the auction temperature early, and that tells you where to time when you're going to spend.
Did you have the hammer at the end of the auction, or were you waiting for it to come back to you?
No, I was actually money even. The rest of it, I finished pretty much with everybody. My last pick was $1. I had a $4 pick. I didn't have the hammer or not have the hammer. It just went pretty pretty standard. And I finished somewhere in the middle of the pack.
Okay. So that I think the draft overall, if you had to give yourself a grade, what do you think you'd give yourself for the LABR mixed auction? What grade do you think you would give yourself? Ignore the injury stuff. What do you think you give yourself as a grade?
Yeah, ignoring the injury stuff, I thought it was an A. I'm not gonna say A plus, but I thought it was an A. I got a lot of excess value. With the injury stuff, it looks like a C. But the baseball gods are against me for LABR at least.
That's true.
Certainly can't control when the injuries happen. So injuries like that.
Let's talk about an auction that we were all in. GDD, the Gotham Diamond District. Again, this is a very similar to NFBC format, other than except that there is trading. Is that right, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay, so there is trading. There's no IL. There's only one lineup per week, whereas NFBC you can switch hitters twice a week. But otherwise, it's the same, standard 15-team 5x5. I did it together with Derek Carty, so some of my strategy was joint with him. We're both value drafters, so that's why we draft well together. We were just picking values somewhere between his numbers and my numbers, right? We just come up with composite numbers for everybody, which we did. We went over players we like and didn't like, and you can pick to that. You guys all had separate teams. So let's go through general strategy of what you were trying to accomplish, starting with Steve.
Yes, in the auction, my strategy is the same as I mentioned earlier. I like to get up front in the say first tier. This is a tier that I really targeted. It's like that second tier of outfielders, 20 to 28 dollars to get two or three of those outfielders because I felt like they had a nice blend of again power and speed bats, and I did pull that off with Luis Robert, Adolis Garcia, and Teoscar Hernandez, and I was pleased there. And I like to get another power bat to complement that, and then balance it out on the back end lower dollars with some speed guys. And Christopher Morel I thought was nice at $1 there. And strategy on the pitching side, again, similar to the snake draft, where I wanted to get two at least second tier aces, soft aces, and I did that with Woodruff and Castillo, and then an anchor closer, and I got Iglesias there at $22, and complimented him with Scott Barlow at 8, which I really liked because I think you know Chapman's done. I think he can't find the plate. He's fried. So I feel like he's going to get more saves than expected. So I'm trying to target again, that 60 to 65 saves with the draft. So yeah, that was my strategy overall.
Ruvain, any points in yours? I mean, you have a similar strategy to me in general.
Yes, I did, but I also planned my strategy around who was in the league. I knew Steve, I knew how he drafted because we were in our NFBC auction last year, so I knew he liked taking some of the middle guys just like we did because he was taking a lot of the guys from us last year. Ariel, I definitely know how you like the draft, so I wanted to try to be a little bit different in that I wanted to spend a little bit more on the top hitter, and I wanted to make sure I got one of those aces because as the auction went on, those aces got more and more expensive. So when I saw a pitcher go only $1 over my value, and I got Verlander for 30 instead of what I had him for 29, I said I'm going to jump on that because I saw Ariel, you were chasing the starting pitchers, and you kept getting shut out of the starting pitchers over and over again. You ended up getting an ace or a 1A, but looks like you were chasing a lot during the course of the draft. So I wanted to get that one ace, which I did. I got Verlander, and I got a hitter. I wanted to get a big hitter also, and then I just said, you know what? Let me sit back, get one closer, and then let all the values come to me because I had the hammer. I wanted the hammer at the end, and I got it, and I got all the good values later on.
Yeah. So for me, again, I was drafting with Derek Carty, and we have to meld styles a little bit. Derek is more of a what's the number on the guy? I'm going to bid up to a certain number. And so we basically set numbers for top pitchers that we wouldn't go over. And we thought because the room, usually is hot in this draft, that we'd probably get, instead of one ace, we'd probably get two 1A pitchers. So that was what we planned for, but we were prepared to go up to a certain price for certain starters. We wanted a wide distribution in hitter values because we want to be able to play at every tier and get the value at every single tier. And the the bat loves Alec Boehm. So we sort of knew we were going to get Alec Boehm just because the bat has a very big price on him. That was the 3 points of strategy, and everything else, of course, that we've said before applies. I want to talk a little bit about nomination strategy, just to interject a couple of different points, in our discussion here. So for me, I saw usually when I nominate a player, most of the time it's actually players that I would like to buy because I want the information on whether I can get a discount now. But the room was so hot. I knew it would be because it usually is. Prices were just going off the wall. So we were just throwing names out that we had no interest in. I mean, we threw out like Volpe like early. I don't know. Our value sheet had him at like -2. So we're like, all right, let's just throw Volpe, see how high it goes, and it did. The only nomination that we really wanted to do, our second nomination, was Ryan Helsley. We didn't want to nominate a top closer. We didn't want closers to come out before we nominated because we thought that the first closer out would have the best price. We brought him out, Ryan Helsley. We got him for 19, and that was one of the better top closer prices. So that strategy worked. And then most of the way, it was pretty much nominating guys we didn't want because it was hot. When it cooled off in the auction, we started nominating players that we did want. Always nominate players that you don't want in a hot spot, in a hot temperature auction, cold when you think you can get them. Of course, if you have too much money, then you need to start nominating players you want because you need to buy players. If you don't have enough money or if you just spent big purchases, get money off the board, nominate players you don't want in general is the general advice. Steve, anything to add about nomination strategy? Do you have any points that you want to touch on?
Well, I think rule number one for me is to not have a pattern. And so just be very creative with your nominating and definitely get money off the table first. That's the age old rule. I do really love how you describe the hot spots because if those tiers of players you're targeting a player or two in that bunch, if that bunch gets tighter and there's less and less players at the tier, that they're just going to get inflated, those dollar values. So I try to nominate a player like an Adolis Garcia I want early just to see if I can get him. But I see it what the cost is. If the value is not there, I mark that down. I say, okay, what's the inflation of these players? And you're right. This auction is a highly competitive league and competitive auction, and it does tend to run hot up front. So um, sometimes you have to decide do you want to spend that extra dollar or not. But from a strategic sense, there's nothing else I really have. I try to nominate players to force create hot spots like you described. Um, Other than that, I think it's mix it up and be creative.
Ruvain, what was your best buy or buys of the auction here?
My best buys. I have a few of them because I just scooped up all the outfielders, all the middle infielders toward the end. I got Nico Horner for 10. I got Jeff McNeil for 6. I got Whit Merrifield for 9. I literally waited for all these values to come to me. I got Kettle Marte for 6. The only thing that I was a little bit concerned, I got a value on JD Martinez. I only got him for $9, which is great, but he clogs up your DH. That's the only thing I'm concerned about is clogging up the DH at that point. But I think I just waited. I had the hammer at the end, and if we had a break, and after the break, I think I picked like 7 or 8. I got 7 or 8 players in a row just because I had the most money, and that's exactly what I want. That was my plan. My plan was just to wait it out, wait it out, wait it out. It's not exactly stars and scrubs because I was getting so many values that my value of the overall team went up.
And what about you, Steve? Any regrets maybe, or any really good buys?
Well, the regret I definitely had was going that extra dollar on Luis Castillo. I got him for 28 and I had him at 26. And I won't say who, but an arch nemesis bucked me up. He put the dollar up. And this is an online auction. So the dynamics there are different. And you're staring at that dollar. And I'm like, I can't let this guy who's beaten me in the past get the picture. Um, so I went another dollar, and next thing you know, my $26 value pitcher, I paid 28. And a dollar may not seem like a lot, but next thing you know, it's $2, and you're 10% above value, which adds up. So that was my one regret.
Yeah, we will talk a little bit about live versus online when we talk about the NFBC live. But just for me, my best buys, I thought Musgrove at 14 was a nice price. I got Patrick Sandoval at 4, Yovaldi at 3. Nice, cheap, good volume, good strikeouts. TJ Friedel sniped Justin Mason, who was eyeing that player the whole time, and I knew he was, and I knew he ran out of money, and I was sort of happy to get him. And $2 Travis Darno, we threw him out there, and crickets were like, I thought first there was like a glitch in the software. Sometimes, you online you spend and nobody buys, and then all of a sudden everyone complains in the chat. Oh, no, we were trying to buy him. I thought maybe that would happen, but nobody did. We won him for 2. Regrets. I think we spent a lot of money on Jake Cronenworth, $9. Javier Baez for 9. I mean, those were okay, but I think we could have gotten better bargains. I think maybe Derek liked them more than me, especially on Cronenworth, but. All right, this happens. Did you, Steve, have any specific reserve round strategy? We didn't talk about that at all, but in a lot of these leagues, in the auctions, you first have an auction part, and then you get to take reserve rounds in a snake format. You fill up all your active slots and then reserve for anything else. Did you have a distinct reserve round strategy?
Really, two things. It's one, filling in needs, like backfilling what I didn't get out of the auction. And then the second thing is upside. So with that, I felt like I needed speed. I was lacking in speed after the auction, so I took Bubba Thompson as one of my reserve picks, and then went a bit of upside with Spencer Steer and Derek Hall.
Any for you, Ruvain? Any specific reserve round strategy?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I had a backup at every position because you never know, people get hurt all the time, as we already see. And I wanted to get more outfielders because I remember last couple of years, when you go on the waiver wire for outfielders, especially in a 15-team league, it is not that really much you want out there. So I actually picked up like a Jose Siri, who he's called a starter right now, and I also drafted Margot earlier. So I actually have the backup for Margot in case he gets hurt, and who he's gotten hurt before. And I saw some upside in Trent Grisham because no one took him, so I took him. And I saw upside I got Gratterall, I got Gallegos, and I got Kluber all late, and I think they help back up my team because a lot of the time, me and you, Ariel, we were going at each other with bids, and that raised a lot of the prices for a lot of the players, and I missed out on a lot of those guys that I wanted.
Well, you raised my prices too, so thanks. Um,
Yeah, I'll tell you in the reserve round, Ruvain, you took Jose Siri from me and Gratterall. It's a nice start on Gratterall. Those are two that you plucked right out of my queue.
yeah, we got
You're
David
welcome.
Peterson, our first choice. I thought that was good. Gavin Stone for upside. Gavin Stone, potential candidate to be this year, Spencer Strider. Take a look at him. And then, yeah, it's just need. We got Randall Grichuk for value. It's either value or need. Grichuk was very high on our value, so we took him. And Hunter Dozier covered 2 positions that we needed. So, it's good to have these multi-positional eligible guys in deep leagues because then, somebody gets hurt, you don't have to go to the waiver wire. So multi-position is a thing I do look for. NFBC, we all were in, Ruvain with me and Steve separate. We were in the NFBC auction live from New York, the very first live auction of the year, which Ruvain and I have been doing for like the past 7 years or so. This year it was in venue Dave & Buster's in the city. Did you like that venue, Steve? It was okay, and hats off to the guys at NBC, Greg Ambrosius and Tom Kucinich for doing that. I thought it was a fun setting, and for me and Ruvain, we had a good seat because we were right next to the projector, and we had a lot of room to sit. But for some of the others, I don't know how good it was. Did you enjoy the room?
Well, I'll tell you, the room, it was fine, right? It was a little noisy in the venue itself. So, maybe slightly distracting. The one thing I didn't like, and I'll tell this about any auction, rule of thumb, because we set up our live auctions. We'll be back in live auctions for GDD next year, I promise, Ariel. But when you do a live setting, it needs to be a U plan, right? So that meaning that the center's open and the auctioneer's in the center, so everyone can see the auctioneer. He could see everyone. No one's back is to the auctioneer. That's like the golden rule of an live auction setup in person. And they didn't have that. Because of the room, they just had rows of tables. So I was sitting on the inside of the table. I got there later than most everyone else. And unfortunately, my back was to a lot of the players. I couldn't see them, and my back was somewhat turned to the auctioneer. I had to turn every time. So I feel like you're disadvantaged when your back's to the auctioneer.
Yeah, agree. But also, the general strategy, I'm assuming for all of us it was pretty similar to GDD that we talked about. The one thing, though, I'll add that Ruvain and I did is we really said no risk. First of all, it's a higher money league. It's $1,500 league. And we really said, like, we're not buying DeGrom. We're not buying Rodon. We're not buying Andrew Heaney, even though it's lower value. Like, just forget risk. We need to keep our bench clear of injury guys just as much as you can. Stay away from risk. Obviously, if there's some value, an offer you can't refuse, you got to take it. But in general, we did that. Anything to add, Steve, or it's pretty much a similar strategy?
Well, definitely similar, right? First thing I do is I mitigate risk just like you do, and especially in a league like this. Um, but it was, and I don't go stars and scrubs typically, but this, if any league, because like you said, it's a high stakes league, people tend to be conservative, and there were the biggest dollar values were with your studs, with the stars, Aaron Judge, all from top to bottom. And you guys got great value. There was some really impressive discounts that you guys were able to pull off. I love what you guys did in your team. Uh, and you can go through those, but I think that's a one thing that separated this draft from GGD. It was not a hot room, right? It was very cool, even keel, and conservative, and so there were values to be had early on in the draft.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And again, it comes from knowing when you have to strike. Because it was not ridiculously hot, you have to strike. We got Spencer Strider at 29. I usually don't do that type of thing, but I thought Strider was the best value from the bunch. There was players going 20. Gaussman went for 26. Woodruff went for 29. Castillo for 27. All right, for a little more, Strider at 29, I thought was a pretty good deal. And we spent the money. Freddie Freeman, 33. It wasn't 37. It was 33. When you have others going for 40, and you have what we think is a first rounder for 33, you strike. And we got plenty of middle values. George Springer at 18. Jake McCarthy at 17 for speed. That type of thing along the way. Anthony Rizzo at 8. Telez at 12, Nico Horner at 13. Just, $3 a bargain here, $3 a bargain here. You add it up, it's going to be about $50, $60 a bargain throughout your whole draft. Anything to add, Ruvain?
Yeah, and I've never owned so many Houston Astros or former Houston Astros on my teams ever before. This is the first year I remember having George Springer. We drafted Jose Altuve again in this league. So we have some injury risk that we didn't intend to, but it happened that way. And we happened to fall into getting. I didn't think we were going to get him, but Salvador Perez, we got Salvador Perez for 18, which I thought was a very good value based on the way the values were going. And when people stop bidding on these players, we're wondering, do we know something or that they don't know, or are they injured or something? And if you look at our outfield, what we did for our outfield is basically what we've done before. Our highest paid outfielder was $18. We paid middle 18, McCarthy for 17, Nimmo for 7, Mitch Haniger for upside at 3, Grichuk for just value at 2. And all those middle guys, I mean, those are values that you can't turn down. And again, if you add them all together, they turn out to a lot of value.
Yep, and we got Freeman as the anchor, so it's not like we just spent middle. We also got the value up top. I do want to talk about one thing that was very prominent, Steve, saves. And I knew because Edwin Diaz was off the table that saves will be pushed up a little bit more, but it was crazy. $25 for Clase. I think there was about 6. Racel Iglesias for 22, Romano for 21. I believe there was Presley for 21. I believe there was about 6 closers who went over $20. I've never seen that before in my life, and as a value guy, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't spend $7 over what a guy is worth. I just never will earn that profit, and there's got to be some either cheap closers later, or at some point you say just punt. I mean, I in the middle of the draft, I was saying to Ruvain, should we just punt at this point? Because these prices are insane.
And I said no. I said
You
no.
said no.
You don't. You can't in a league like this. You can't punt this early, especially there's so many names still on the board that you can get at value.
Yeah, and there's an overall component. So we ended up settling on an $18 Felix Bautista, who, believe it or not, was absolutely the best bargain of the lot. So we didn't go empty. But I don't know if Bautista went over 20, I might have said just let's go cheap, because I just can't pay over $7. What did you think of that? What was your thoughts as the draft was unfolding, Steve?
As far as with closers, since there is the overall, as you mentioned, I wanted the anchor, and that's been consistent with the how I'm going into these drafts. So the $22 Iglesias I was happy with. There's a bit of an increase, like $2 increase on there, but it's there's limited. It's inflation because there's not much supply and there's a ton of demand for that, especially for an overall. I'd rather pay the extra dollar or two on a proven commodity, a proven stud, like the top closers, versus some of the back end closers are really getting inflated. David Bednar, right? He went for like $18 or something.
Yeah, 18.
Um,
Crazy.
that's and some of the lesser, uh, less sure closers or shared or committees, they were going for a top dollar. So I'd rather, if I want to spend a few more dollars, a dollar or two more, I'd rather do it at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought the prices were getting ridiculous. So Bautista to me was a $3 overpay rather than a $7 overpay. Again, as I preach, as long as you have, as long as you're paying a smaller market premium than everybody else, you're okay to a point. When you're paying over $5 market premium, though, there's no way you can make up that profit later on. At some point you got to decide not to do it. But thankfully we had Bautista there. Any regrets? Any other regrets to talk about, Steve, on the team that you did here?
Actually, with this team, no regrets. I really liked what I did. I thought I had a lot of upside and a lot of good value in this draft, so I was very pleased.
And you took Nestor Cortez from us. I saw that.
You know, I this is key for me too. I feel like in the especially in the overall, people underestimate the importance of ratios. So I really like to get that whip down, right? Control that whip, and if your whip's low, your ERA is going to be low. And Cortez is great for adding value on the whip side, whip category.
I actually had one sort of regret during the draft, and I spoke to you about this, Ariel. We had Freddie Freeman, we got Rowdy Tellez, so we had a first baseman and a corner, and then Rizzo came up, and we got him at what we thought was a great value at $8, but he had to go into our utility, which sort of limited us as to who we can nominate the rest of the way, who we could pick up the rest of the way. So I mean, I love the value, but do you think it was the right thing to clog up your utility with a third first baseman just because the value was there?
Yeah. So let me talk about this for just a bit. The name of the game is buying the value, and when you're in the middle end, more towards the end of the auction, I'd say, and you have a certain dollars amount left, you have to spend it on some people, and there's going to be bargains. The question is, can you get the biggest bargains? You want to get as big. If you have got two players and $5 left, you want to split it and get a $3 guy's worth 8 and a $2 guy's worth 6, and combine for a nice big bargain. When you have an Anthony Rizzo and we got him for 8 and our value says worth $13-14, the question is, can you get a $6 bargain somewhere else in the draft later on? Probably not, or I don't think you can do better than that. Like with that slot, I don't think you can get better than about a $6 bargain. So, you have to make that determination. I know it blocks. I know it limits us in terms of nominating, but you can't turn down a $6 bargain at that level. $8 worth 14. It's hard to get a bigger return on investment. So the calculation was, let's do it. And by the way, we also liked that profile. The power actually balanced our profile that we had up until then. So good fit for the categories. Bargain was just insane. At some point, you got to say, right? And if a guy is a $2 bargain, you can't take him but when you're later in the auction, because there's going to be a better $4 bargain, right? There's always, you just have to calculate what's the best number bargain you're going to get. And if you spot that dollar amount, that's what you take it. That's why a lot of my decisions later in an auction are snap decisions. I know the dollar bargain I'm looking for a slot. I get it. I bid up to that number. And then if it goes over, I'll find somebody who has a bigger bargain, and vice versa. Do you agree with that, Steve?
I do. That's a great point. And this draft specifically, this auction, because it was again the opposite of GDD. It was not a hot room. All the top players, they were going for $3 to $4 discount, and I'm talking about Aaron Judge, Jose Ramirez, Marcus Semien. I got Nolan Arenado for a $3 to $4 discount. All those guys were going for a significant discount. So, like I said, over a 10% discount. So that means that the back end of the auction is going to be inflated, right? So the dollars have to go somewhere. So instead of getting deals at the back end, people are spending, I'm looking at values here, Taylor Ward going $2 over. So that's middle of the draft. But if you go to the back end of it, you got guys like, Jared Kelenic going for $4 over value. Um, let's see, Max Muncy, that's middle of the draft, back end of the draft. I'm getting down. I'm going through the AVs. Seth Brown,
No
Benintendi.
bargains. No bargains.
Yeah, yeah. It's wild. If you look at it, if you go through the AV in the back end, it's wild. Like I said,
Yeah.
Kalenic was 4, Naylor $3 over, Rendon $2 over. I would not go for Anthony Rendon for $6 at this stage in his career.
And they had to,
You know,
because they had to use their money. So you end up, because they didn't spend early enough, or because they didn't get bargains in the middle, they are overspending late. And again, that reinforces why Rizzo, that bargain really made sense. And that reinforced what you said earlier, that you did need to get a top player in this draft, because there was no super bargain super late. So,
exactly.
you always have to take the temperature of the auction. That will tell you where the bargains are. You knew right away, there's good values at the top. There's not going to be great values late. So if you don't, you're going to have too much money, and you're going to be overpaying for players at the bottom. Last draft that we'll cover, Tout Wars head-to-head, a part of Tout Wars weekend at the Edison Hotel in New York. I sat through pretty much every single auction. Steve, you were there for a couple of them with me also.
Right.
What did you gather by sitting? Because I know you as well as me like to sit through them. What do you gather? Do you gather information? Do you enjoy the camaraderie? Like what do you take out of it?
Well, I do have a lot of friends who do the draft, so I really enjoy the community and the camaraderie. But you can learn. You see what players certain experts or touts are targeting, and everybody's got different techniques in the auction. So I just love and every auction is different, right? The dynamic of the auction, who's inflated, where are the values. It's fun. It's great to go along. And you had your sheets there with you with your dollar values, and I love comparing the ATC dollar values with the prices the players actually went for.
Oh
That
yeah.
was quite interesting.
Yeah, like everybody who sat next to me was just kept looking at my paper. Just hey, let's see what ATC compares to everybody else. And guy goes up for bid. What does it say now? So it was kind of like a nice scene in the back that you and I were a part of.
And was your strategy any different? Because this is a 12 team mixed auction with head-to-head points with playoffs. So how did your strategy change when you compare this type of auction to, let's say, the NFBC 15-team league?
Oh yeah, so this is a totally different strategy here. Now, this is an expert league. It's Tout Wars. There were a lot of new players in the league. I think 5. And now they've never. It's an advantage to be in a league already. You know the dynamic. You know what plays. These players haven't been in the league, so maybe they didn't know exactly what would play. And one of my strengths is valuing players. So because it's a different format, I knew there was going to be some more people that valued players closer to the roto style. In a points league, first of all, the stolen bases don't play as much. Pitching plays a lot more, especially pitchers who give innings. Innings are more important, because if you have a blow-up outing, your ERA is not trashed forever. If you pitch 7 innings, you're getting 21 points just for pitching, however good or bad you do. So innings plays. And the values are muted. The top players, I calculated, were worth like $32. And it didn't go all, it pretty much steady through the middle. Players were more similar to each other. So when players are going for $40, $44 for Julio and for $43 for Acuna, like they would in a roto, that's not just $4 or $5 of excess of value that they're over. That's like $10 to $15 per player. When you have, and I knew this would happen because it happened every year the last couple of years. When you have players going for $15 over and everybody's buying that just tells you that you should not buy any player on offense for more than like $16-18 because you're just throwing out money. You're going to get the entire middle, scoop up the entire middle. And that was the general tenet. I did have to watch out for one specific owner, Frank Stample, who won this back-to-back, who has the same strategy as me, values the same ways. We're going to be bidding against each other the whole time. Now, we didn't actually do that this time. It wasn't that much of a battle between me and him, as in prior years, which actually helped my cause here, but I had to look out for him. But so that's the general strategy there. The couple specific things I want to add to what I did was catchers, though, were more market value driven. It was pretty much more accurate. So the idea is, same thing as I said at the top of the show, I'm just going to not pay on hitters in the middle other than catchers. So I just bought 2 catchers. I didn't get Real Muto. I got Will Smith at 21, Salvador Perez at 17. So, I spent there. And then my next highest hitter was a $15 Cedric Mullins. But Brian Reynolds at 13, Santander at 9, Castellanos for 6, Dansby Swanson for 9. It's a $20 player here. I'm getting excess value on everybody in the middle. And I paid up for pitching. I got Robbie Ray for 20, Gausman for 22, Castillo for 24, Logan Gilbert for 12. Good prices, but I wanted to get quantity in pitching because quantity helps. And I paid up for a top closer. I got Emmanuel Clase for 19. So it was pinch the closers and catchers, quantity in the pitching, and just bargain in the hitting. And I pretty much executed what I thought.
Now, we've talked about all these auctions so far that we all did. Steve, I'm going to start with you first with this question. What was your hitter-pitcher split for your budget pre-draft? Was it any different this year as opposed to prior years?
It depends on the format. On an overall, again, I'm going to lean a little bit more pitcher heavy, like a $160 for hitting, $100 split for pitching. But I originally was, years ago, 180 for hitting, $80 for pitching, and that was standard. And that's evolved over time to be more, I'd say, 150 hitting and $90 pitching. That's typically my target. As regard to split. I'm not sure percentage wise, but is that like a 65% split? 65-35?
And Ariel, what did you do differently in the Tout League when it's a 12 team compared to a 15 team? Did you do any differently?
Well, 15 to 12 wasn't much of a difference. It was more the format. This was 55% hitting, 45% pitching because of the format and the rules. Again, this is not a categories league. You don't need any stolen bases. You don't actually need to have a correct hitter pitcher split. But again, as I always tell people, your value sheets should reflect whatever's in the room. I calculated the room would be about 60-40 hitters pitchers, so my values reflected that. I chose to buy more pitching, but your value should always be what you think is reflected in the room. NFBC is something like around 61%, 39% pitching in the auctions. I do want to say one more thing that I did in the Tout Wars. I put up Jose Altuve, and I bought him for $8. Now, Jose Altuve full speed is $22 player, at least $25 player maybe. In this, first of all, 8 is a pretty good discount for missing 2 months out of 6. But besides which, this is a playoff format. I get the full value of Jose Altuve in the playoffs. As long as I make the playoffs, I now have an extra $10, $15 of excess value by rostering Altuve that I got for next to nothing. And I got so many discounts that I'll take an $8 Altuve, put him on the bench. So, I don't know, I'll be a little bit light for the first couple of weeks, but then I got a playoff Altuve, so that was one thing I definitely thought to do. Frank Stanfield did that with Carlos Rodon. He bought him. He bought somebody else also, I know. I'm trying to think. He bought Joe Musgrove. Same type of thing that, all right, he won't start the first week or so, but now he's got the whole value. He also bought Fernando Tatis Jr., So because he bought, a little bit of the risk, he said, you know what, I'm throwing the first 2 weeks anyways. Let's just get Tatis, because now I got Tatis for the playoffs. So he employed a similar strategy, and I think that was effective.
And is there a general rule that we should go by for players who are injured, that to a certain amount of discount we should go for?
I mean, in general, you're pricing it, with the lower playing time, and then you're adding replacement level stats. That's really how you price it. So, if a guy is going to miss half a year and he's a $20 player, it's going to amount to something like, 10 plus 2, something around like a $12 player. Of course, there's, it depends on the format. If you're in the NFBC, then there's no IL, so he's worth a lot less. And with his IL, that's roughly what he's worth. In a playoff format, he's going to be worth more than that because now you also get him for the playoffs. So you add a couple dollars to that.
So, Ariel, with Altuve, so how much time are they saying he's going to miss now with the broken hand?
I'm going to say, actually, Ruvain should be the one to answer this one.
That's actually part of my injury update that's actually coming
Okay,
up.
I'm sorry to jump ahead, but the question I have, real quick, here's the question I have for you, Ariel. Then, if you have, just say in general, regardless of what the injury is, if they say it's a 6 to 8 week, usually you have a 2 week window there, 6 to 8 week window for your projections, what do you take for the reduction then? Do you split the difference or?
I'll usually take about 7 to 8. I'll usually look at what other projections are doing, and I'll, typically mimic that. If I have a strong feeling one way or the other, or Ruvain tells me something, I'll, lean more toward that side.
I'm just going to mention Jose Altuve first. He had a fractured thumb. He's going to have surgery. They're actually waiting for the swelling to go down. They don't know how long he's going to be out yet. They already said 8 to 10 weeks, but you have to wait and see what type of surgery is done first before you can actually say that. It may be 6 to 8. It may be 8 to 10. We don't know yet until he actually has the surgery.
Okay, that's interesting. And for us, we have a lot of shares of Altuve. I took him even after he got injured, so I'm loaded with Altuve, so I hope he goes really quickly. The one topic we didn't really address so far was online versus live. And I think online is so much better. So, Steve, I preach on the show that I sort of hypnotize the audience, or I use my voice to get buys and to control the room. Did you find that to be true?
I mean, I think there's a lot you can do live. So I agree with you that live is definitely the preferred. In person is the preferred way to go. It's a different dynamic. You get to hear and see people and see if anyone has any tells, right? They're doing the same thing over and over, repetitive behavior. And I do like you do a great job of throwing people off with your different cadence and volume of your throws and, bids.
Yeah, I try to do it so that you actually don't know if I want a player or not, or whether I'm just price enforcing. And I'm guessing that you kept guessing?
I try to guess right, but I typically I do the opposite. I just try to say slow and steady, just steady Eddie, so that they can't tell. It's just as emotionless as possible, and see how that goes. There's no tell, disinterest almost, if you will, in everything.
I try to put fun in the room, you know?
Well, that's what I was going to say. A lot of times when you say a bit out loud, you can hear some chuckles in there, and the way you're saying it out loud, and sometimes that can just throw the people off right there because if you're trying to concentrate, and all of a sudden something silly happens, or you hear a silly voice or something like that, it can throw someone off, and it lets you control the room a little bit better.
Yeah.
You can be
Yeah.
in a live auction with Ariel, do it because it's quite entertaining, and
Yep.
it's just a great experience. It's a lot of fun.
There you go. Yeah, I gotta say, the labor auction we was in was so much fun, and you had a lot of fun guys in there. Nick Pollock was there, Ronis, Great Albright making jokes. Ryan Hallam was fun. Just you have a lot of fun guys. It's entertaining, and then people were copying my cadences. 4, 7. So it was a lot of fun. But I will say though, the online, what I really don't like about it is two things. One, that plus button is so frustrating because number one, you can't bid what you want because it's locking you out. And then when you do bid, you're actually not bidding the right number because then you're going over what you want. And somebody who's outbidding you, he's also bidding somebody a dollar over. Like nobody's ever bidding what they want. Very frustrating. And the second thing is, when you're hearing bids live, you don't have to look. You hear it. You hear the player's name. You're looking at your own sheets or whatever you're doing. When you're doing online, you look at your own sheets. You also have to look at the screen and use your mouse and click. You have to do two things at once. You can't go back to your numbers and do the clicking. There's too many things to do with online. I don't like it.
Plus one button is a significant risk. I mean, if you're looking at a player who's like $24 player and he's at 20 and you say plus one at 21, all of a sudden somebody types in 26 and you don't see that, you just plus one it, and it's too quick to see. All of a sudden you're at 27, 28 without even intentionally or meaning to do that. So quite frustrating.
Yeah. So definitely we recommend doing live auctions. Okay, Ruvain, injury report, and there's some big names here. Please get everyone up to speed.
Yeah, so I already mentioned about Jose Altuve. Yohan Moncada, who was playing in the World Baseball Classic, actually had a collision with one of the outfielders, and he's still dealing with a bruised rib, but did not suffer a concussion. They still think he should be ready for opening day, so don't worry about that too much yet. Andres Munoz, who's we actually have a lot of shares of this year, has not yet pitched in the Cactus League, but he did already pitch last week in a B game against the Padres. So he did pitch. He's actually reported no setbacks from his surgically repaired ankle. So hopefully he'll be okay for opening day, if not very soon, right after. Alex Kirilov will not be ready for opening day. He's still recovering from that wrist surgery. Some names to think about. Joey Gallo may get more playing time. Jose Miranda, Donovan Solano, they can all play first base, so those are guys to watch for. Michael Soroka is set to make his Grapefruit League debut tomorrow. Today's Tuesday. He's making his debut on Wednesday. It'll be a question whether he'll be ready to start for the season, but you never know. It may send him down for AAA just to get his innings up, but we'll see about that. Brandon Nimmo, who we have a lot of shares of also, sprained his knee and ankle sliding into second base. He was tested today, and supposedly everything went well, and he believes that he will be ready for opening day. So that's a good sign for all Brandon Nimmo owners. Jorge Polanco may begin the season on the IL because he's feeling some quote-unquote normal soreness after taking batting practice recently. He's looked good so far, but he's gonna start on the IL. So if you have him, look for your initial fab to try to get another middle infielder just to be on the safe side. Harrison Bader is doing better than anticipated. That's said by Aaron Boone, so I don't know how much you can take for that. He still probably miss about 6 weeks. So if you have an IL, keep him there. And if you're still drafting in an auction like that, still try to take the value on him. We mentioned Jordan Alvarez. He could play in a Grapefruit League next week, so it's looking up for him. I don't know if that's going to affect his value because he may still be behind other players just because of his injury. And another guy on his team, Michael Brantley, is actually behind him. So if you have any thoughts of drafting Michael Brantley, I'd hold off on that. And of course, the big news, Edwin Diaz had successful surgery to repair his patellar tendon tear. Now, I wanted to speak about this. People were wondering, oh, he went to the World Baseball Classic and got injured that way. He's injured celebrating. No. The patella tendon is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, tendon in the entire human body. If he tore it jumping up and down while after throwing a 100-mile-an-hour pitch using that leg to push off of, that doesn't make any sense. What probably happened was is that there was a tear in the tendon that he didn't know about even after he had an MRI on all testing when he had his new contract. He probably had a tear in it, and it just happened to be that this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it could have happened anywhere. This is not something that he happened because of the World Baseball Classic, so people shouldn't be knocking it for that. Any event, Edwin Diaz says he hopes to pitch at the end of this year, but being a Mets fan, I hope he doesn't because the Mets have him for many years, and you want him to be fully healthy when he returns.
So he was a ticking time bomb, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. If it wasn't going to happen there, because he got the injury jumping up and down. What is there more torque going on in the knee, pitching or jumping up and down celebrating? It doesn't make any sense. So there had to be something going on there before, and it just happened to be the just that one motion did it, and that was it.
Wow, very interesting take and very, very sad. I was depressed for a couple of days.
Oh man, that's rough for a Mets fan. Sure, I feel for you guys.
The Mets are
Bad for
cursed.
baseball too.
The Mets are cursed.
Another injury, Ruvain. Did you hear about the Carson Kelly injury?
Yes, Carson Kelly has a fractured forearm. He is going to miss at least, I'd say, probably 2 months. They haven't said how much he's going to miss yet, but he's probably miss about 2 months. That means it's Gabriel Moreno season in Arizona.
Yeah, that value just will shoot up this week's draft. You'll see. Do you have any update on Juan Soto? He had the oblique issue. Is that major or minor?
They haven't said whether it's major or minor yet. They haven't announced that, but he did tweak it, so he may be a little bit behind. He may not even start the season on time. They may be being extra cautious. I mean, it's a question. If it's a mild oblique, he can only miss maybe like 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks tops. If they get an MRI and they say it's a moderate oblique strain, then you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks. So just keep an ear out, and when you hear the terms mild and moderate, the difference between mild and moderate is about a month.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be drafting Juan Soto in the first round anymore for this weekend before you know anything. Do you agree with that, guys?
Yeah.
I do, and oblique's a tricky thing too, right, Ruvain? I mean, you can say
Yes.
that there's that time period, but then you don't know the impact or implications it'll have for the duration of the season, right? It could be
Yes,
longer.
it could flare up after even they come back. It may zap some of his power just because of the way the body torques when they swing. So I think they're going to be a little bit extra cautious. Although he's going to want to get on the field. This is his contract season. He's going there to play for money right now, and the two top free agents coming into next year are Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. And Shohei Ohtani just ended the World Baseball Classic by striking out Mike Trout. You know what his value is going to be, but Juan Soto's coming off of a
Did
down
that really
year and
just
starting
happen,
off.
by the way?
Yeah,
That was how it
yes,
ended?
that really
It
just
just came
happened.
up on my
Yes,
phone. Wow.
Oh,
yes, yes.
wow.
That really to end the game after Mookie Betts grounded into a double play. Um, but
Latani's got
he's
that over
coming off.
Trout all season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe that's why he won't come back to the Angels now. I don't know. Maybe he thinks Mike Trout's not that good, right? But anyway, his value is going to be based on he had a down year last year. He's coming to this season now injured. I think he better be very careful, otherwise his value in the offseason may not be what he wants it to be.
If you're an Angels fan, you have Mike Trout and Otani, and your team stinks. I mean, that's horrible management by them. How do you let two of the best five baseball players in the game at least? You have both of them, and you had Pujols for a while also, right? How do you let that, and you can't make the playoffs ever? That's horrific.
It's a very bad situation. I mean, could you name their top five starters? Can you name who their closer is going to be? That's their problem. They don't have anyone besides those guys. They're so invested in those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of closer, I threw some darts at Jimmy Herget at the end of a few drafts, having the reserve round and late in both snake drafts I'm in. So we'll see. I don't believe in Carlos Estevez, and
And Herget
Herget. It
looked
was
good
good for
last year.
10, 15 saves.
And
Yeah, he'll be
Herget
good for
looked
10
good.
to 15 saves.
And Herget looked good last year. So
Estevez should get the first shot, but I mean, how reliable. It's not a bad dart to throw. I like that. Good tip, Steve. And by the way, this was a fantastic show. I mean, I think we analyzed our teams, but it was more about giving the strategy and how it played out, and hopefully the listening audience, hopefully you guys got some really good nuggets as to what to do based on what we actually did. I think that the three of us have very similar strategies. It's not conflicting strategies. It's more nuances here more than anything else. So thank you so much, Steve, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invite, and I enjoyed the time. And I enjoy talking to you guys always about baseball and our auctions, and um, there'll be many more of that for sure this season.
Yeah. Anything going on, Steve? Are you heading to Vegas, or what's coming up for you?
No, no, but I do have a couple more online drafts, online auctions, which, like we said, we don't enjoy as much as the live ones, but I am not getting out to Vegas, so I'll be online this weekend with two different auction drafts.
Ruvain, what about you? What are you doing this week?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru. I'll continue to tweet out the injury updates as they come fast and furious before the season starts. Now, you have to also remember when people are drafting, a lot of these players don't hit the IL until opening day. So when you're drafting someone, it may be a dead spot on your roster. So just keep that in mind. And you can follow me on Rotoballer. I will have a weekly article in season discussing all these injuries starting the first week of the season.
Yep, I'll be writing for Rotoballer this season as well as Fangraphs. You can see the ATC projections, which will be updated, I believe, Thursday in time for your draft this weekend. Hey, you can follow me on Twitter at ATCNY. Ruben and I will be doing, I think we're doing a home league in-person auction that we haven't done also since before COVID, so we're looking forward to doing that. Smaller, 10-team.
Last draft of the year.
Yeah, last draft. 10-team
Nice.
mixed auction. Limited keepers. More Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz was one of our keepers, but they are letting us get back the money. So we lose the bargain of the keeper, but at least we get something back for them and don't have to roster him. Oh, boy. So overexposed to Diaz and Altuve. Do you believe in diversifying, Steve? Because I don't play in that many leagues that I feel like I need to. Do you do that?
No, I tend not to. Maybe on the pitching side, a couple studs. I may try to diversify there just because pitchers tend to be higher risk from an injury standpoint. But no, I mean, get your guys, believe in your guys, get them. It's all about value, honestly, at the end of the day. So if anything, it's gonna be the draft dictating it and where the values fall. So that may be why I diversify, not by intent, not intentionally.
Spoken by the 2022 Auction Championship NFBC winner, Steve Cozzolino, with just a fantastic season from the same division as the same league that we played in. So obviously it was very tough for us to win last year against you. And hopefully you'll finish in second this year, and we'll finish in first.
We did it again. Yeah, we'll see. Will be fun.
That would be great. All right. Thank you so much to our guest, Steve Cozzolino. Hope you enjoyed this show, and thanks again for dealing with my little bit of raspy voice, as it's tiring doing all these auction lives, and hopefully by opening day, my voice will be pristine. But thanks again for listening. Hope you got something out of it. And any questions, just shoot them over. My DMs are open, and make use of them as you can. All right. Once again, from all of us here at Beat the Shift, have a fantastic rest of your draft auction season, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.